Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mack. Man, brutal loss tonight. Cavs lose to the Los Angeles Lakers by the score of 121 to 115 in a game that honestly came down to the wire. No defense was played whatsoever in the first half. Things kind of got turned on in the second half defensively, but man, you cannot go into a game like that and let the opposing team score 70 plus points in the first half and expect things to go our way. You just cannot do that. Man, but before we really dive into things, the King, he returned. He's averaged 29 points, 7.6 rebounds, 7.1 assists against Cleveland prior to tonight. He returned to take on the Cavs for the 21st time in his storied career and his 8th time as a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. The dude, honestly, guys, and I know that not everybody is in unison with this thought, but the guy that I consider to be the GOAT came into tonight with a 5-2 record against Cleveland since departing for the City of Angels. We took the last two, so I really like the Cavs' chances heading into this one, especially with the return of Donovan Mitchell and Isaac Okoro. Donovan's missed the last 4 games because of his hammy injury, and honestly, he's been pretty damn good himself against the Lakers throughout his career. In 16 career games against LA, D. Mitch has totaled 24.8 points, 4.9 rebounds, and 4.8 assists, while knocking down 46.5% from the field, including 35.7% from three-point distance, and held a 9-7 record heading into tonight. That record moves to 9-8. LeBron's record against us moves to 6-2 since his most recent departure from Cleveland. And honestly, man, it was disheartening. Let's start from the jump here. LA got off to a 7-0 start. That's how for me, man, I just knew things. We were in for a long game after that 7-0 run to open the game. Darius Garland turned the ball over a couple of times in first quarter after, and then exited due to a knee to the head. I hope he's okay. I really do. But this is just really, really starting to pile on in regards to these injuries. It feels like there's no relief just in a game where we're getting Donovan Mitchell and Isaac Okoro, two of our core pieces, right, in this rotation. Just as we're getting these two guys back, Darius Garland in a very, very big time matchup against the LeBron James led Lakers, we miss Darius. We lose Darius midway through. I want to say the second. Man, it's all a blur, man. It's all a blur. He didn't play the second half. Isaac Okoro started in his place in that second half, and it's just not a good feeling. He only played 14 minutes tonight, just 6 points, 3 assists in that time, and honestly, he just wasn't all that impactful at this one because he just didn't have a chance. He didn't even have a shot before exiting. Luckily, we got some contributions off the bench from Karis LeVert, who returned this last game against Miami. He contributed as a playmaker tonight. Didn't necessarily score a ton. He was just 3-9 from the field, but he did pick up the playmaking duties for Darius Garland and the Cavaliers by dishing out 8 assists on big ones. As Noah Heritage says down here, the injuries are starting to become very frustrating. Noah, I completely concur with you on that. It just doesn't seem to be an end in sight in regards to these. And some of them are just like freak injuries. Some of them are just accidental. It didn't seem like there was any intent, obviously. He bumped into, I believe, Max Christie's knee, his head. And so you could tell that he was shaken up because he was on the floor for a little bit. That whole possession after he went down, he didn't even come down the court to try and D up the Lakers. He was clearly visibly bothered. He was holding his head. We entered the locker room, and then, we got a little bit more of him after that, but clearly he was shaken up. And so we didn't get to see him in that second half. And honestly, that felt like a pretty devastating loss that was felt. Luckily for Cleveland, they did get contributions from that bench in the form of LeVert, but also from Craig Porter Jr., who is slowly but surely kind of He's already endeared himself to the fans, but he's kind of morphing into, dare I say, somewhat of a star. He is not afraid of the moment. He's not. He shows no semblance of fear whatsoever. We know that he drived and attacked Joel Embiid in that Philly game, and tonight he goes up and he attacks Anthony Davis, the league leader in blocks at the moment, and just doesn't have any regard for anybody in front of him. He will challenge you at the rim, and more often than not, he'll make the shot. And he did tonight. He was an efficient 5 of 7 from the field, gave the Cavs 11 points in his 17 minutes of action off that bench. And he was a nice punch needed in that scoring department, especially with Darius Garland exiting. But it just wasn't enough, right? And he honestly, I was this was a game that could have gone either way, obviously. Darius Garland's absence was honestly very much felt. But after Craig and Karras kind of turned it on off that bench, I was thinking, hey, we got a real shot at winning this, especially considering that Jared Allen continues to have a very, very good start to the season himself. Tonight, in his 37 minutes, which led the Cavs, by the way, he gave us 21 points, 14 boards, 3 assists, 2 blocks, 3 steals, just filling up the stat sheet. But with the caveat of not being able to truly stop Anthony Davis. It just didn't matter whether it was Evan Mobley or Jared Allen out there playing on him defensively. There was no answer for Anthony Davis. And we know what the case is with this guy, right? As long as Davis is healthy, he is a top 5 player in the NBA. I think that's warranted. I honestly do. Tonight, he gave LA 32 points, 13 boards, and was a pretty efficient 13 to 20 from the field. That's the book on Davis. He has elite two-way potential as long as he is healthy. When he's out there, he's a threat. And neither Jared Allen nor Evan Mobley could really do anything to deter him from getting to his spots, especially down in the low post, which for me, like Jared, although he had a ton of rebounds tonight, I kind of felt like Jared was not able to get him out of position down there. He wasn't able to box out the way that he should have been able to kind of end some of those possessions, right? And garner some more offensive rebounds when the Cavs really needed them. Davis was just a monster down there in that low post. Just nothing you could do to contain him. And, this is obviously it's not something that has haunted the Cavs in their previous matchups with LA, but it's definitely something that you circle on your calendar and you say, hey, Davis is probably going to give us even more so of a problem than LeBron is, honestly. And tonight, LeBron, he wasn't all that great himself. I mean, he obviously down that stretch, he was able to get the job done, right? But LeBron wasn't his typical efficient self either. He's actually shooting above 40% from three-point distance this season, for those of you who didn't know, but he went 1 of 9 from three-point distance tonight. He did contribute 22 points, 6 boards, 6 rebounds, 8 of 23 overall on the night, but I mean, I didn't necessarily feel like LeBron was the true difference maker in this one. It was AD, man. It was AD and some of these contributions from some of the role players, right? Max Christie was pretty big tonight. And speaking of Max Christie, I gotta say, way too many backdoor cuts. He found wide open lanes to the basket on those backdoors, really on the baseline. I saw a ton of that occurring, especially in the third quarter. I absolutely hated it, man. Taurean Prince, former Cleveland Cavalier, he knocked down a timely shot or two. D'Angelo Russell, he did his thing for the most part. They just got too many contributions. Even Jackson Hayes, man. And Jackson was another guy who was out there hitting us on those backdoor cuts and some of those actions on the baseline. Just absolutely horrendous defense, especially in the post. There was just no deterrence. It was free roaming to the rim, especially in that first half. I hated it, man. Tonight, the effort, especially from a defensive standpoint, just didn't seem to be there. And the crazy thing is, with the return of Isaac Okoro, I was really feeling like this was a really strong possibility that we could clamp down. We did that in the in the second half, especially in the third quarter, but it just was far too late. You cannot have the start that we had and expect to win. And Bebo, I see your comment down here. Mac never reads negative comments on here, but I hope he realizes that the Cavs are definitely not winning a playoff series again. Don't get too invested just for the team to let you down again. For me, it's November, man. It's November. If you guys are seriously looking at this team who has had just a handful of games fully healthy and suggesting to yourselves that we slap a label on this team, whether they're good, bad, great, terrible, it's too early. So, Bebo, if that's the way you feel, more power to you. I will not join you in that ship, and I would encourage other Cavs fans to not jump ship on this team either, or invest themselves too deeply into it so that they don't let you down. I mean, nah, that's just not my style. But you do you, buddy. For me, I'm not necessarily going to say one way or another that this team can't win a playoff series because I believe that they have the pieces to. They just got to put it together. We've already seen a couple of big time wins this. You can't tell me that after beating the Denver Nuggets, the defending champions at that, and the Philadelphia 76ers, while not being at full strength, you can't tell me that they're not capable. They are. That's just me calling a spade a spade. If you don't believe that, you don't believe that. But I've seen this team do some pretty great things. They're just inconsistent as hell. And they are unfortunately experiencing some of these injuries that are becoming worrisome. They're becoming worrisome. And for me, it's just like tonight, I can't use that as an excuse, right? The Darius Garland exiting the game, that sucked. It sucked ass. But does it mean that the Cavs still weren't capable of winning this game? Absolutely not. They came out in that third quarter and they made me believe that defense was back, right? The rim was being protected a hell of a lot better. The perimeter defense started to step up, with the exception of George Niang, that we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, this was a perfectly winnable game, even with Darius exiting. The Cavs just were a little bit too lackadaisical down the stretch, for one, and couldn't knock down some of these late game opportunities. Donovan Mitchell comes to mind on some of those mid-range pull-ups on some of the last possessions of the game, where he honestly hits a lot of those. That's a shot that he makes a lot of the time, but he didn't have it going tonight himself. He was just 4 of 18 on the night, so he probably should have passed. And I think on one of those possessions, he actually had Max Strus wide open out there and just either didn't see him or just didn't trust him enough to knock the shot down. And it's stuff like that we have to figure it out. We have to be able to figure out ways to win some of these big time games. We've done it before. We just did it against Philly. We did it against Denver. There was no reason why we couldn't do it again tonight. And obviously we just didn't get the job done. It's a tough loss. Doesn't mean that this team is cooked. No, it doesn't. It's November 25th as of recording this. If for anybody that believes this team is cooked, you just gotta take a step back, take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. It's a long season. A lot of shit can happen. Once these guys really start to gel, you get a lot of this new rotation moving forward. That includes Craig Porter Jr. stepping up more and more as time goes on. You just got Isaac Okoro back. Donovan Mitchell's finally back after his 4-game hiatus. I still feel really, really good about the chances of this team. They just got to figure some things out on it, some individual levels. Darius Garland has got to cut some of these ill-advised turnovers over. Donovan Mitchell has to learn when to trust his teammates and not necessarily play so much isolation basketball at certain points. I feel like he really could have moved the ball and we could have got a better look towards the end of the game. I'm not going to kill him for that. I'm not going to beat the guy up because that's, again, a shot that he makes a ton of the time. But it just didn't happen tonight, and he did not have the shot going in his first game back. He still was able to go out there and drive his way inside and score a ton just because of the sheer fact that he drew a ton of foul calls, right? He did take 13 free throw attempts tonight, which is good, but, couldn't get the job done. I said that we'd reference George Niang. That's another sour spot for me. I just posted on Twitter, or X as people, whatever it's called these days. It's a gift and a curse. playing George Niang at times can feel like a fucking gift and a curse because on the one end, he's starting to pick it up. He's starting to knock down some more of these shot attempts, right? He was 5 of 13 on the night, 3 of 9 from three-point range, and he gave the Cavs 13 points off the bench. But just as many points as he scored, he probably gave up. I got to look into the statistics for tonight. I haven't been able to take a dive into the stats just yet. But just the eyeball, the eye test tells me that Niang, he was lackadaisical on closeouts. He was getting beat off of screens, and he gave up some pretty wide open three-point attempts. So I would not hesitate to say that Niang probably gave up just as many points, if not very close to it, as he scored tonight. And that's the story of him. That's the book on Niang. He will give you the spacing that you ask of him more often than not, but he is also prone to being attacked on defense, and he is also prone to being lackadaisical. He's just not it defensively. What you hope for is that he's able to offset that with the spacing that he provides. And as of late, he has actually been doing that. He's actually been doing that. Bobby Schumacher says, I think Niang had 3 straight misses on 3 straight possessions when it was back and forth in the third. So that's rough. Yeah. And prior to that, he had actually been knocking down some shots, and he had been doing that in the past couple of games as well. So his percentages, I got to check it out again, but I believe his percentages have been rising as of late. And I really saw that he was turning a new page. And I'm not going to use tonight as like his, to shit on the guy. But I got to say, man, like for every point that he scored, it just felt like he gave it up. It just felt like on the defensive end, he was a complete liability tonight. And a lot of the time, I can live with that as long as you're spacing for. And here it is right here. In Niang's last 5 games, he's averaging 11.4 points, 4.4 rebounds, and he's shooting 50% from three-point distance. That includes tonight's game. That is 2.2 makes on 4.4 attempts, which is high efficiency on low volume. So I can't necessarily complain and say, hey, this guy isn't knocking down that shot, which is the entire reason why we brought him in, right? That is literally why we brought him in. Not to play defense, not because he's a 3-and-D wing or anything like that, but because he is able to space the floor consistently, and he is able to give us minutes at that power forward position, which we know we have lacked since the departure of Kevin Love. And as of late, he's been doing that. It's just that it's so damn frustrating because for everything that he gives you offensively, he's just as prone to giving it up on the defensive end. And that's exactly what happened tonight. And honestly, tonight's is one of those games in which you're kind of feeling like, hey, I wish the Cavs had another option out there to throw out at the power forward position. But frankly, they just don't. Dean Wade's not available, and his a lot of people probably will not say this, but I got to say, I really felt like Dean not being out there, especially from a defensive standpoint at that power forward position off the bench, that really hurt. That honestly really truly hurt. It's not something that couldn't have been overcome, same as the Darius Garland injury. And I'm not going to use these injuries as excuses, but I will say that you can clearly see the difference when some of these guys are on the court versus when they're off. For Darius, you had the option of leveraging his absence with Craig Porter Jr. and Karis LeVert as as other operators of the offense. Those guys are perfectly capable of operating the offense and facilitating out there and setting some guys up, as we saw Karis do on a number of times tonight. And we saw Craig Porter Jr. do over the last couple of games when Donovan Mitchell wasn't out there. Dean Wade, on the other hand, since he's not out there, you have no option to go to opposite George Niang if Niang is kind of being targeted on the defensive end, short of just sticking with Evan Mobley at the power forward position, because you're not going to put Tristan Thompson out there. Some of these other guys you have off your bench, Damian Jones, he's not a power forward. Tristan Thompson's not a power forward. Sam Merrill, he can't give you minutes there. So you're kind of stuck with it, right? You could theoretically use Max Strus as that guy, but he's already giving you big minutes at the 3. And so I think the Cavs, if I'm not mistaken, their closing lineup tonight was Donovan Mitchell, Karis LeVert, Max Strus, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. Not mad at all at that, but it just goes to show like the Cavs just don't have a ton of options, at the big spots that you can rely upon. And let me walk that back a little bit. They have options at center. They don't have options at power forward. It's Evan Mobley or Max or George Niang. That's it. When you don't have Dean Wade available, those are your two options. And so I say all of that to say on a night when Niang is absolutely being targeted from a defensive standpoint and his shot starts to starts Jesus, I'm jumbling over my words here. When the shot stops falling, you don't have any other options. You got to keep playing them. And so tonight, it hurt. It really did. Elsewhere, when you look around here, there were some good things that you can take away. Max Strus continues to be a pretty impactful player out there. 13 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 5-11 from the field, 3 of 7 from the three-point line, and continuing to run some of those DHOs and developing some of that chemistry that we've seen with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. The passing out there, the playmaking from Strus, it's wonderful. It's great. But it's not necessarily something that can make up for the departure of Garland, who is obviously the Cavs' best playmaker. All in all, just a shitty loss. It sucks to lose a game like this that felt like it was winnable right up until the end. It really did, especially even after LeBron picked up that technical foul for hanging on the rim, which I still think it's a bullshit foul call. Either way, even if the Cavs didn't get that call going their way, that's still a dumbass call to me. I really hope they change that, but I'm glad that it still gave the Cavs an opportunity. Obviously, Donovan makes that free throw, and then they go down and they convert and on the other end, and then they make a game of it, man. Right up until the fact that, let me tell you guys, when I knew that this game was probably going to be out of hand was when Evan Mobley rather missed the free throw to tie the game. I believe the score was 113-112 after that missed free throw. I knew the game was over at that point. Just could not contain the Lakers on those last few possessions. They still had an opportunity. They failed to convert on that opportunity. Sucks. It's not the end of the world, though. Very, very early into the season. The Cavs, I believe that this is the first half of a back-to-back. They will take on, if I am not mistaken, let's see here. They will take on the Toronto Raptors tomorrow in a game that hopefully they can get back on track in. But again, Toronto, just like Cleveland, they're a hard team to truly nail down. Is this team good? Is this team bad? Same things you can say about them, you can say about us. Yeah, we got the Toronto Raptors tomorrow. M2K SPChu says, so sick of this D-Mitch hero ball. Yeah, we've seen him win multiple games for us this season. We saw him do it a ton last season. It does get frustrating at times. As I said before, on one of those final possessions, he had the opportunity to hit Max Strus out in the wing for a pretty decent look, but he either didn't see him or he just didn't trust him enough to take the shot. It's things like that you need to see improvement on. And that still includes Donovan Mitchell, right? Donovan is not a perfect player. He has areas that he needs to grow in, and unfortunately, that's one of them. Some of that is on JB Bickerstaff. Can't not critique JB for some of the lack of creativity tonight, especially on that offensive end. We know JB's calling card is defense. Offense, unfortunately, just doesn't appear to be. He's not necessarily as bad as a lot of people really like to point him out as being, but the creativity does kind of seem to be lacking at certain points, which, a lot of people think that, JB is not the man to get the Cavs over the hump. I'm not going to use tonight as an instance to allude to that. What I will say is, the great coaches, the Steve Kerrs, the guys out there like that, the Doc Rivers, or at least early career Doc Rivers, Um, they find ways to win these games. They do. That's all I'm going to say in regards to JB. He's got to fix some of these things. I thought the rotations, all things considered, were decent tonight. I can't complain too much. Maybe Niang played a little bit too long down the stretch. Maybe Craig Porter Jr. didn't get enough run, but where are you going to get those minutes from, especially when you're already playing him out there because of Darius not being available? Just not a ton of things that you can do tonight, not a ton of options. Some of these guys out there that you could throw out to kind of soak up some of the minutes to stop the bleeding, a la Dean Wade, just he wasn't available tonight. Darius Garland, he exited. That pressed Craig Porter Jr. into action. Levert got his fair complement of minutes, and Isaac Okoro obviously off that Cavalier bench. I thought he was pretty damn impactful himself, but there's only so much that the reserves can do. So all things considered, I thought JB's rotations were decent tonight. And that might sound like a crazy thing to say, but when you look at it, this is a winnable game. And I don't think it came down to poor rotations. I really honestly felt like it came down to poor defense, especially in that first half, and a lack of offensive firepower in that second half. If Donovan Mitchell doesn't have it going, who else is going to get the job done? And we did get to see small glimpses again of the greatness that seems to exude from Craig Porter Jr., but not too many guys had it going on tonight outside of the front court pairing of Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, who combined for, I believe, 17 of 24. They were highly efficient, but they cannot necessarily generate offense for themselves. They need guys out there to create opportunities for them, whether that be in the lob game or off of a timely assist. Just didn't have it, man. The backcourt as a whole, outside of Craig Porter Jr., just wasn't great. Karis LeVert didn't have a great shooting night. Donovan Mitchell didn't have a great shooting night. You didn't have Darius Garland available to you. What the hell are you going to do? So rotations tonight, to me, was not the issue. All I can say is I hope they can figure some of this shit out. K-Dude says, I think JB and the Cavs front office has to sit Donovan down and tell him he's going off ball or he has to go. Hero iso ball won't cut it. He can't play make, and his play style is way too selfish. And so for me, K-Dude, I think that is a conversation that will eventually be had if things like this continue to occur, right? It's Donovan's first game back after a 4-game hiatus. He obviously didn't have the shot going. The hero ball is a kind of a defense mechanism that Donovan, I think, turns to out of necessity when he feels like the Cavs just don't have another option capable of putting the ball on the floor when Darius Garland is missed. I do feel like some of the ball movement can be lacking at times with him, but I mean, he did finish with 6 assists tonight. Couldn't and make no mistake, assists are not always the best indicator of how well a player is facilitating or if he's being selfish or not, because we've seen guys out there that hunt assist, stat pad, things of that nature. Russell Westbrook for so long, especially in his Oklahoma City days, was widely criticized for doing that after winning that MVP. But yeah, I mean, I think that's probably just something that Donovan falls back on because he feels like the Caps just don't have another option offensively to truly turn to. Max Strus isn't that kind of guy. He can knock down shots. He's wonderful moving off ball, cutting, getting to the rim, but he's not a guy that you can really count on to put the ball down and get a bucket when the Cavs need them to. And so for me, for Donovan, if I continue to see isolation basketball being the Cavs' go-to each time they go down the stretch, yeah, I think that's a conversation that maybe you might have, but I don't think you say to him, "Hey, you gotta tell him he's going off ball or he has to go." I don't think you say that to your superstar. I just don't. I think that you have that conversation with Donovan. He's probably going to be not necessarily hurt, but he'll probably be pissed off and he'll probably want out. Not something you say to your superstar, no matter how frustrating isolation or hero basketball can be. You don't want to rub him the wrong way, especially if you're planning on eventually flipping him, because then your value will be diminished. So hope they don't have to go that route, and I don't think they will. I see you also said down there, if Garland isn't healthy, it was Rubio stirring the ship. Besides Garland, the Cavs don't have a point guard they trust. CBJ isn't experienced enough. Honestly, dude, I think they trust Craig Porter Jr. I think JB, contrary to popular belief, has actually given Porter extended run in moments where normally JB wouldn't do that, right? JB typically doesn't trust rookies to to play big time roles in his rotation. He's actually hasn't been too reluctant to do that with Craig. And some of that is out of necessity, right? You didn't have Donovan for a dearth of games. You didn't have Karras. You didn't have Isaac. You still don't have Ty Jerome, right? No, Ricky Rubio is an afterthought at this point. So some of it was a necessity. So I'm not going to completely give JB credit for turning to him. But what I will say is he does deserve some credit for leaning into him. So I do honestly believe they trust Craig Porter. He obviously wasn't in the closing lineup tonight because the lineup was Donovan, Karras, Max, Evan, and Allen. But he did garner significant playmaking capabilities and responsibilities tonight. He has over the past couple of games. So I do feel like they're starting to trust him more and more, and justifiably so. Anytime Craig has the ball in his hands, legitimately, I feel like the Cavs can make some shit happen. That step back three that he had where he put, I think it was Austin Reeves in the blender, just beautiful, right? Uh, and that's not necessarily something that you can count on from him on a consistent basis, but it was nice, right? It was nice to see him do that. We know he has no fear. He continues to drive. His game is really drive and kick, right? He can facilitate, and he makes some of the most easy on the eye dimes out there. Even if guys don't make the shot, there was this one tonight who threw cross court to I think it was George Niang possibly out in the left corner, and Niang just couldn't knock it down. He sets guys up, and I think if you keep playing him, you continue to give him the opportunities that he has warranted at this point, and I think that he is going to reward you. I think he has by all means earned the title of backup point guard for this position, for this particular Cavs team, even when Ty Jerome returns. I think he has earned that role. I think they're probably still going to play it safe with him and probably wait until his 2A eligibility runs out to make a decision on converting him, because I think there is a 0% chance at this point in time, especially if things continue to go this way, that they don't convert him. Absolutely 0% chance of that happening. They're going to eventually convert his contract, especially if he continues to have outings like he's had in the past couple of games, including this one. So we don't have to necessarily worry about that. And I don't think they're necessarily missing Rubio a ton right now because of what Karras and Porter are able to give you off of that bench from a playmaking standpoint. Because it's not like it's not necessarily like Rubio was some ultra efficient shooter either, that he was capable of hurting teams in other ways outside of facilitating, because he just wasn't. So I think they're just fine without Rubio right now. I think if Rubio wanted to call it a career, he could, and it wouldn't really have too big of an impact, because frankly, even if Rubio came back, very similar to Ty Jerome, I think he's on the bench. I think at this point he's outside the rotation looking in. And that's just where I'm at right now. I think he has done enough to truly be considered the backup point guard of the future. And I've already seen some ridiculous statements out there like, hey, he should be starting alongside Donovan, or he should be starting alongside Karras. I'm not Karras, Darius rather. No, he shouldn't be. He's not yet earned that right, but he is quickly becoming one of the most impactful players on this roster. And he's put on the tape right now that, and teams are going to have to start game planning for him. And to be honest with you, I don't think anybody had this in their bingo cards. I know I certainly didn't. I felt like he had a decent opportunity to eventually make the rotation, because the Cavs, even heading into the season, and this was before the Ty Jerome exit, right? I felt like he had a decent opportunity to carve a rollout earlier than Amani Bates would, but I didn't think it would be this early. I think anybody saying that is probably lying to themselves. Um, I don't know. It just sucks to lose a game like this one. It really does. We got a first round talent undrafted. That's actually crazy. Yes. And I believe Craig Porter Jr. made the Kia NBA rookie ladder as the 10th guy after previously being unlisted, after he was undrafted, right? Nobody had him on the radar. And he already looks like the, a top 10 pick out there. And Amani Bates, easily has also been a steal. And we haven't seen much of him with the Cavaliers, but he's shown us things in small glimpses, and he's done so as well with the Charge in the G League. I think he gave 29 points last night, if I'm not mistaken. Wasn't the most efficient scoring night for him. I think Amani was 8 of 22, but he did knock down 5 of 10 from 3-point range against the Motor City Cruise in Cleveland's game against them, which was a loss, but I don't give a fuck about wins and losses in the G League. I just want to see individual player development. And I feel like Monty, he'll eventually get his opportunity just as Craig has, but it's a little bit more complicated with him because the Cavs don't necessarily have a finite, like a definitive opening for him the same way that they have for Craig Porter Jr. It was a little bit easier for Craig because we did need a backup point guard. Craig appears to be that guy. When you're looking at Amani, who is basically a 2 or a 3, right? And sometimes you can get away with playing him at the 4. It spurts, I guess, because of his height, but I wouldn't put my money on that either. I certainly do not want a 170-pound Amani Bates out there playing the power forward position. Don't want that. But just strictly from a size standpoint, it could be something that they eventually try and do. He's just not at that point. And when you factor that in with the fact that you have Isaac Okoro, who has just returned, giving quality minutes at the 3 position, you have George Niang, who, again, it's a gift and a curse. Offensively, he will space the floor. Defensively, he can be a liability. Scratch that, is a liability, right? And then Dean Wade, when he is healthy, he would deserve minutes over Amani, despite anybody's grievances over him. You're not even factoring in Tristan Thompson, right? And Karis LeVert out there who can give you minutes 1 through 3, and sometimes at the 4. So it's an uphill battle for Amani to be able to climb into the rotation. Kind of a different type of story, different situation for Craig, right? But with all that being said, all we can truly do moving forward is hope that what we have in place right now with this rotation is able to stay healthy and put some games together, some complete games together, because every big time win they've had this season has come with somebody missing, and we haven't gotten a real look at just what this Cavaliers team could be at full strength. And I guess that's probably a good way to leave it at. Don't want to harp on too long about a loss in late November when the season is long as hell. So, as I always tell you guys, if you would like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to subscribe to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review. Send a screenshot of said rating or review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I'll send you an invite. That said, go Cavs. Have a good night.